It's not love, it's ego. Watch this. You keep asking yourself, why can't I let go of him? You wonder, if I feel this much, if I'm this affected, isn't that love? But let's stop right there. What you're feeling, that ache, that pull, that isn't always love. Sometimes it's your ego bleeding out because you didn't get the validation you thought you deserved. Love doesn't keep you questioning your worth. Love doesn't make you chase someone who makes you feel like an option. Love doesn't manipulate your emotions just to keep control. Sometimes we confuse not being chosen with being in love. We think, if he'd just come back, if he'd just finally pick me, that would fix everything, but it wouldn't. Because you're not chasing a person, you're chasing closure your ego never got. You weren't in love with who he truly was. You were in love with the idea of being enough for someone who couldn't see your value. That's not romantic. That's self-abandonment. You're holding on to someone who let go of you, and you call that love? Real love feels calm. It feels consistent. It shows up not when it's convenient, not when you pull away, not just to stop you from moving on. Real love wants to grow with you. Ego just wants to win. And maybe that's what you're feeling right now, the pain of not winning, of not being the one he picked, of feeling replaceable. But if someone made you feel replaceable, don't prove them right by replacing yourself with someone you're not. Don't become quieter, more agreeable, more patient, less you, just to finally deserve someone who never tried to deserve you. The moment you confuse ego for love, you stop protecting your heart. You hand it to someone who doesn't know what it's worth, hoping they'll notice eventually. But here's the truth. You don't need them to finally want you. You need to finally want yourself. It's not love. It's ego. And the moment you realize that, you get your power back. What often feels like heartbreak or deep emotional pain isn't always rooted in love. It's rooted in ego. When someone leaves us, ignores us, or doesn't choose us, we feel broken. We assume it's because we've lost something irreplaceable or someone we loved deeply. Maybe I wasn't good enough, and that belief is what keeps us stuck, not the actual connection itself. You may find yourself repeatedly thinking about someone who wasn't even consistent with you, someone who played games, or someone who never fully committed, and yet your mind keeps going back to them. You call it love, but it's really a bruised ego that hasn't found peace. It's the internal narrative of why not me? Why her and not me? These are not the questions of a heart in love. These are the cries of an ego that feels defeated. Love is not desperate. It doesn't force or manipulate. It doesn't make you feel like you need to fight for a bare minimum. When someone rejects you or fails to show up for you, love gives you the grace to walk away. Ego, however, holds on to the pain, replaying every interaction, dissecting every word, looking for a reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, you were the problem. That maybe, if you were prettier, more chill, more understanding, they would have stayed. But that's ego's trick. convincing you that someone else's inability to see your worth is a reflection of your lack of value. The moment you identify this, everything starts to shift. You realize the pain is less about the other person and more about what it made you feel about yourself. It's not about what you lost. It's about what you believe that loss says about you. That is not love. Love is generous. It's kind. It allows you to feel safe. It doesn't trigger anxiety, confusion, or constant self-doubt. Those are signs of your ego being poked, not your heart being cherished. In truth, what hurts the most isn't losing someone. It's believing that their absence defines your worth. But your worth doesn't hinge on anyone's choice. The ego needs validation to feel whole. Love doesn't. Love already knows you are enough. So if your heart is in pieces after being rejected, remember this. You are not grieving love, you are grieving the story your ego created about what their approval meant. And once you separate those two, you'll begin to heal not from love lost, but from the illusion your ego wrapped itself in. When someone walks away from us or chooses someone else, the pain we feel is often mistaken for love, but in many cases, we are not actually missing the person. We are missing the validation they gave or withheld. We become obsessed with the idea of being enough for someone who never made us feel seen in the first place. That fixation is not rooted in emotional connection, but in emotional deprivation. It's not about the quality of the bond. It's about the fact that our ego is still waiting for someone to come back and prove our worth. This is where the distinction between love and ego becomes so important. Love is about connection, reciprocity, and growth. It flows naturally between two people who choose each other every day. It's not about winning or losing. Ego, on the other hand, turns relationships into battles. It needs to win. It needs to be chosen. When someone doesn't pick us, the ego is wounded. It doesn't understand how someone could walk away from what we had to offer, especially when we gave so much of ourselves. That hurt often gets misinterpreted as love because it's deep, consuming, and emotionally overwhelming. But just because something hurts doesn't mean it's love. Many people find themselves stuck in the cycle of ruminating over an ex, not because they shared a deeply fulfilling relationship, but because they never got the closure or validation they craved. They keep replaying conversations, reanalyzing moments, and wondering what they could have done differently. This is not about a desire to reconnect with that person as they were. It's about wanting to go back in time and finally feel like they were good enough. The person becomes symbolic. They represent approval, worth, or significance. And the loss becomes unbearable, not because the love was so strong, but because the ego never got to win. The danger here is that we begin to chase ghosts. We start pursuing the version of ourselves that we imagine would have been worthy of being chosen. We believe that if we could just show up differently, more perfectly, more beautifully, more quietly, that person would finally choose us. But that's the trap. That's ego's voice convincing you that your worth is contingent on someone else's validation. Love doesn't require transformation at the cost of your identity. Ego does. And the more you chase validation, the further you get from your true self. It makes us check social media, compare ourselves to new partners, and question everything about who we are. We stop trusting our instincts and start performing in hopes that someone will finally say, "You were enough all along." But the truth is, no one else can give you that answer. If your love for someone is built on the condition that they validate your worth, it's not really love. It's a reflection of a need you haven't yet met within yourself. And the healing begins when you stop seeking that in someone else. When someone truly loves you, they don't make you question where you stand. They don't leave you in the dark, waiting for breadcrumbs of affection. Real love is consistent. It doesn't operate on a push-pull dynamic or manipulate your emotions to maintain control. If you find yourself constantly wondering if someone cares about you, constantly checking your phone, rereading old messages, and overanalyzing every little interaction, chances are you're not experiencing love. You're experiencing emotional confusion created by inconsistency. And that's usually a product of ego-driven behavior, not genuine care. One of the most painful things is believing someone loves you while their actions say otherwise. They may come back just when you start to detach. They might show interest when you're moving on and disappear the moment you start giving energy again. That cycle isn't love. It's ego preservation on their end. They're not nurturing a connection with you. They're maintaining a sense of control. They don't want to love you fully, but they also don't want to lose you. That isn't a romantic gesture. It's manipulation, even if it's subconscious. Love doesn't wait until you're slipping away to start showing up. Love is proactive, not reactive. It's steady, not erratic. Someone who loves you doesn't need to be scared of losing you to finally treat you. And yet so many people stay trapped in toxic cycles because the inconsistency feels familiar. It creates emotional highs and lows that feel intense, like passion or depth. But that emotional turbulence is often trauma, not love. The emotional roller coaster can become addictive. Your brain gets used to the cycle of tension and release, of doubt and short-lived reassurance. But intensity is not intimacy. Passion is not proof. You may even find yourself defending them, saying things like, "He's just scared of commitment," or "He doesn't know how to express love." But love isn't about guessing games. It's not your job to decode someone's mixed signals or justify their lack of effort. Real love shows up clearly. It's not perfect, but it's honest. It creates security, not confusion. And if someone only starts acting interested when they sense you're pulling away, that's not a sign they've realized their love for you. It's a sign their ego is being triggered. They feel a loss of power, not a surge of love. Once they feel they have you again, the behavior reverts and the cycle starts all over. That's not a partnership. It's an emotional tug of war. You deserve someone whose love is loud in action, not just in words. Someone who doesn't need to feel like they're losing you in order to appreciate you. Love is not about control, timing, or fear of missing out. It's about mutual respect, mutual effort, and showing up for each other every single day. Not just when one of you is about to walk away. There's a dangerous belief many people fall into when trying to win someone's affection. The idea that if they just change enough, become quieter, more agreeable, more patient, more attractive, they will finally be loved the way they want. This mindset leads to a pattern of self-abandonment where you slowly lose your authentic self in the name of being chosen. But the truth is, becoming less of who you are in order to be loved is not romantic. It's a betrayal of your own identity. Love should never cost you your voice, your values, or your self-respect. It starts subtly. Maybe you laugh at things that aren't funny. You downplay your needs because you don't want to seem too much. You silence your intuition because you're scared that speaking up will push them away. Over time, you shape yourself into a version you think will be more desirable, more lovable, more low maintenance. But each time you do this, you disconnect from your core. You tell yourself, if I'm easy enough to love, they'll stay. Yet deep down, you feel more unseen and unappreciated than ever. You might even start to believe that the real you isn't lovable, that if someone saw the full version of who you are, the one with needs, flaws, opinions, dreams, they would walk away. So you edit yourself. You become who they need, not who you are. But the problem with that is clear. Even if they stay, they're not loving the real you. They're loving the version you've created for their comfort. And no matter how much effort you put in, it never quite feels fulfilling. You're left with an ache that no amount of their attention can truly fill, because deep down you know you've abandoned yourself. You deserve a love that meets you where you are, not one that requires you to shrink. You deserve to be chosen for exactly who you are, not who you become to get chosen. If you constantly suppress your true feelings or walk on eggshells in a relationship, you're not in love, you're in fear. You're afraid of rejection, afraid of being alone, afraid of not being enough. But real love doesn't feed on fear. It builds on authenticity. When you abandon parts of yourself just to keep someone, you're telling yourself that your wholeness is too much, but the right person won't ask you to dim your light. They won't be intimidated by your strength, your truth, or your emotional depth. They'll be drawn to it. They'll celebrate it. You were never meant to fit into someone else's mold. You were meant to be fully expressed and fully loved in that expression. If a relationship demands that you constantly prove your worth or filter your personality to maintain peace, that's not love. It's survival. And no one should have to survive their own relationship just to feel temporarily wanted. You owe it to yourself to stop chasing love that only accepts a fraction of you. There's a pivotal moment in healing that often goes unnoticed, the moment you stop lying to yourself. The moment you look at a situation, a person, or a relationship and finally call it what it is. When you stop romanticizing red flags, when you stop calling inconsistency mystery or avoidance emotional depth. That's when the real power begins to return to you, because until then you've been living in a version of reality that protects your pain, not your peace. And the longer you stay in that illusion, the longer you give someone else control over how you feel about yourself. The truth hurts, especially when it disrupts the fantasy you've built around a person. It's easier to believe they were the one who just didn't know how to love you than to accept that they simply didn't want to. It's easier to believe there's unfinished business than to admit they finished the relationship in their mind long before you did. But truth, while painful, is clean. It cuts through the confusion. It stops the spiral. And it gives you back the power you unknowingly handed over when you were too afraid to face what was real. When you finally admit to yourself that what you were experiencing wasn't love, but ego, fear, or emotional manipulation, you stop waiting for someone to rescue you from the hurt they caused. You stop hoping they'll come back and give you the closure they never cared to offer before. You stop needing their apology, their explanation, or their regret to move on. You begin to understand that healing doesn't come from their return, it comes from your release. Taking your power back is not about pretending you don't care. It's not about becoming cold or detached. It's about choosing truth over fantasy. It's about recognizing that someone who played games with your heart was never holding it with care. That the love you wanted was never really there. And that doesn't make you unlovable, it makes you human. You were just hoping that the story in your head would finally match the reality in front of you. You may feel weak for caring. You may feel ashamed for holding on. But here's the truth. Having a soft heart in a world that often rewards detachment is not a flaw. It's a strength. The key is learning how to protect that heart, not by hardening it, but by honoring it. I think By walking away from anyone who makes you feel like love has to be earned through pain, silence, or self-betrayal. You reclaim your power when you stop needing someone else to rewrite the ending and start writing your own. You decide that your worth isn't measured by who stays, but by how you show up for yourself when they leave. You realize that it was never about getting them back. It was about getting you back. And that's when the healing truly begins, not in their return, but in your recognition of what was never real and what has always been true. You were always enough. Thank you so much for watching. If this message hit home for you, if it opened your eyes, gave you peace, or helped you feel just a little bit less alone, then that means everything. Remember, healing starts with truth. And you are so much more powerful than the version of you that begged to be chosen. Until next time, take care of your heart.